Hi everyone, my name's Young. I'm a recovered alcoholic. It's really good to be here. We are going to start on page 76, which of course is looking at step 6 and 7. But before we do, I was just thinking I would just talk very quickly about how we get to 6 and 7. Joe and Charlie talk about 6 and 7, where the changes really begin. They call 6 and 7 the pinnacle of the program. And so I come in, I see my lack of power in step one. I see I need to get to this power. God, spirit, love, the word for me is very unimportant. And then I have this willingness because of my step one truth. I have this willingness. I have this willingness to open my mind, to have an open mind, willingness, honesty. And then I make this decision in step three to get into these 12 steps, to get into action. I write some inventory. I write some inventory. I share it with another person, with myself, and with God. And then I get to 6 and 7. And I was talking to someone earlier on about how often such a big deal is made of step 4 and 5. Oh my goodness, step four, step five. And I loved how someone referred to it the other day. They said it's just a bit of written work. It's the big reveal because I'm getting these spiritual breadcrumbs throughout the 12 steps if I have an open mind and willingness. I'm starting to see the flaws in my makeup. I start to see these defects of character before we've even really got into them and looked at 6 and 7. So I'm going to start reading and we'll see where the Spirit leads us today. So, page 76, it says, if we can answer to our satisfaction, we then look at step 6. And step 6 says, we're entirely ready to have God remove these defects of character. And when I do a step 5 with someone afterwards, we have this list of these defects that have come up, such as impatience, intolerance, selfishness, dishonesty, fear, and entirely ready. When I look at those words, I can see that they don't bring any goodness back to my heart. In fact, they separate me from you. If I'm judging you, I've put a barrier against me and you, and I've put a barrier against me and God. And lack of power is my dilemma, and without help, this is too much for me. So I'm entirely ready to have God remove these defects of character. And actually, already the spiritual breadcrumbs have been laid out in the big book, because when I read the part in step 3 that says selfishness, self-centeredness, that we think is the root of our trouble, driven by 100 forms of fear, self-pity. So what's the root of my troubles? Defects of character, because everything comes out of fear and selfishness. So already it's told me, but maybe at that point I can't see it. And actually I couldn't see it when I read that. I said, I'm not selfish. But by this time, I'm God is shaping, I'm allowing the Spirit to shape me, to open my eyes, to help me be entirely ready, because I don't want to be in pain anymore. I want to be free. um we have emphasized willingness as being indispensable. And if we think to page 568, when it says the who of this program, this is how simple this program is. I don't have to bring a knowledge of the big book at this stage, or God. All I need to bring to the table is willingness, honesty, and open mindedness. And then it repeats that here: willingness, indispensable, which means I cannot do without it. I cannot do without willingness. I, I, but yet no one can give me willingness. How do I get willingness in step 6 and 7? Because these defects start to become more and more objectionable to me. And actually, as I start walking this walk, they start to cause me pain. Now, again, it says we've shouted willingness, indispensable. When won't I be willing to go to God with my defects of character? When I believe I'm right. When I believe, well, I'm angry because you did this. When I believe you're the problem. When I believe you're the reason I'm angry, I'm not willing to go to God. when I'm asleep, when I'm back in my self-will, my righteousness, my selfishness, that I need you to be a certain way just so I can be comfortable. Um, so this willingness is indispensable. And step 6 and 7, this is about me letting go and going to God with these unpleasant thoughts, thinking, behaviors that block me, that absolutely separate me from you. If I'm impatient, I'm separated from you. And if God's everything, you're God and I'm God, or part of this spirit, and I'm separated. If I'm angry, I'm impatient. If I'm angry, I'm separated. Am I now ready to let God remove from me all the things which we have admitted are objectionable? I've seen these things in step 4 and 5. You know, where it says in step 3 that um, I have to be convinced. I have to be convinced that my life run on my self-will is not a success. When I first read those words, they're merely words. But when I've written inventory and I've shared it with God, with you, with myself, it's in black and white. There's my self-will. I start to see these defects of character, the flaws in my makeup, my mistakes. I start to see that I react in a certain way when I don't get what I want, when I think you're wrong, etc., etc. Um, and these defects of character, these are the things that clutter my heart. These are the things that weigh me down and hold me back from seeing the preciousness of life. They make my life heavy when life is meant to be light. They make me think that life is something to be endured rather than something to be embraced. And often when I think about 6 and 7, I think about the story of the Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. For some reason, it always comes into my mind. And, you know, I'm just saying this as a story, not as trying to push some sort of religious aspect on you. If you don't like it, you know, it's just a story if you want. But God has said, look, humans, here you go. You've got utopia. You are living in heaven. You've got everything you could need. Just don't eat that apple. And what do? I eat the apple. And so these defects of character seem to be my default setting, something that I've developed over time and have become a part of my personality. Now, I don't choose to be angry. It just comes. I don't think I've ever chosen to be jealous. It just comes. I don't think I've ever chosen to judge you. It just comes. So lack of power is my dilemma once again. So that also flows through the big book and flows through this walk. Lack of power. And think back to step 3, because for me, these steps start dancing into each other now. What is step 3 but me turning to God? What is step 6 and 7 but me turning to God? And in step 3, relating to what we're talking about in these pages, it says, I must be rid of this selfishness. I must, or it kills me. But yet I can't do it alone because I don't choose. Lack of power. I don't choose to be selfish. It just seems to come out of me. And then it talks about resentment being the number one offender, but it says I can't get rid of these resentments either in the mind that creates them. So when I start to see this clearly, then I'm entirely ready. Then I'm going to God. But I don't believe, and my experience tells me this isn't as simple as me just saying, God, please remove them, and sitting down and waiting for these defects to be removed. I believe it's these actions as well that we start to put in. You know, the spiritual breadcrumbs that I've talked about in these pages that are laid out in the book, they point to these defects of character being the root of my troubles, being the thing that makes life heavy, the thing that separates me. But also it points to the way out being helping God's children. Because when I'm picking up the phone to a newcomer, I'm not being judgmental. I'm not being impatient. I'm not being jealous. I'm bringing love to the table. What's the opposite of my defects of character? Love. God, kindness, but I need help with that. And so God wakes me up. You guys wake me up. This process of the 12 steps in the big book wakes me up to what I am on my own. Without help, this is too much for me. Um, it says, can he now take them all? All, everyone. Can he take them all, everyone? If we still cling to something, we will not let go. And here's the first prayer. We ask God to help me, to help us be willing. And I also add that. I ask God to help me be willing and for a deeper awareness, so that I can see when I'm reacting in a certain way. Now, if I still cling to something's just come into my mind and I really don't want to share it with you because I feel embarrassed, but I'm going to share it anyway. The defect of character that I used to hold on to was the defect of lust. The defect of lust. Now, even in my first couple of years, I would, and it makes me feel horrible sharing this, but I need to share myself honestly because this is what we do. By showing myself, somehow God shapes me away from that. The defect of lust, I would, if a pretty lady walked past me, I would look back like that. It was a habit that I always did. I always did that. And even in my first year, maybe my first 2 years, I would still do it, and I didn't think there was anything wrong with it. Because this is how God works through me. This is how 6 and 7 works in my life. And then one day I saw someone doing it to my daughter. That was a spiritual breadcrumb. And from that moment, I can't do that because I think that's really disrespectful. That's someone's daughter, that's someone's sister. It started to pain me. It started to become objectionable to me. Um, and now we get into the step 7 prayer. When ready. So am I ready now? What is objectionable to me today? Do I still stay in self-righteous anger? Do I still judge? Well, defects of character are always going to be there. God never removes every single defect of character from me, and I haven't come across anyone who's whiter than white and doesn't judge, or sometimes doesn't get impatient, you know. But what's happened is I'm a lot less judgmental. I'm a lot less selfish, and when these things come up, God's Spirit makes me aware of these things, and they don't feel good. When ready, we say something like this: My Creator, I am now willing. There we go. We've got that willingness again. That you should have all of me, good and bad. And it reminds me a little bit of the opening of the step 3 prayer. The opening of the step 3 prayer. God, I offer myself to thee to build with me and do with me as thou wilt. You know, I'm saying you can have all of me. Rebuild me, please, God. Take all of me, good and bad. I'm not all good and I'm not all bad. I'm a bit of both because I'm just human and I'm going to make mistakes. And sometimes, no, not sometimes, I need my defects of character. It reminds me how much I need God in my life. I need Spirit. Without help, it's too much for me. Without help, I am judgmental. I am impatient. I am intolerant. When I get wrapped up in the bondage of myself and my self-righteousness, I'm all those things. So take all of me, God. Mold me. Mold me. Please help me. Please give me willingness to walk this path and to see my flaws and to share them honestly with my fellows. So I'm willing that God can have all of me, good and bad. I pray that you now remove from me every single defect of character which stands in the way of my usefulness to you and my fellows. So this is an interesting bit in the prayer. It's not saying get rid of all of these, the ones that are standing in the way of my usefulness. So again, it's a spiritual breadcrumb pointing to being useful. Similar in the step 3 prayer where it says, take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I will help of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. Again, they're very similar. 3 and 7 dancing into each other. I, how do I know that one of my defects of character might not be helpful to someone? How do I know that? I don't know. Maybe a defect comes out in me and you see it and it helps you see a defect in you. I don't know. And I used to say things like, where was I going with that? Because I don't always know the will of God. I used to say, well, God's will is simple when I'm being patient, loving, kind. It's the will of God. Well, I don't always know because there's so much mystery and so much paradox in this walk. But I do know when I'm not in these defects of character, when I am showing love and patience and tolerance, so something kind of gets very warm inside here. Um, and on a very, very simple level, step 6 is about willingness. Step 7 is about humility. And for me, step 7 just means less me, more God. Less me of what I want, what I think you should do, me not accepting life on God's terms. It's less of that. It's more of me lying down in the river of life, allowing myself to be taken down the river of life. And Bill Wilson in the 12 and 12 refers to the defects of character as the 7 deadly sins. And I think it's very apt. I think it's very apt. Where were we? Where were we? To remove every single defect of character which stands in my way. I almost picture that. They stand in my way. I'm not going to be useful if I'm angry. I'm not going to be useful if I'm sat in self-pity. They stand in the way. They're a barrier around me. And I look at it like this. I think these barriers that I've built through the years of this defective, these flaws in my makeup, the process of the 12 steps, it sort of seems to take one brick down, one brick down. There's these thousands of bricks that are barriers between me and God and me and you, me and my fellows. Every kind act takes a brick down. Every selfless act takes a brick down. But then, because of these defects of character, every time I'm impatient, it puts another brick up. So it's this constant ebb and flow. You know, we often, and I don't know if I'm repeating myself, it's been a long day. um, we often talk about, or I hear in the rooms, step 4 and 5 as, oh, 4 and 5, you know, like this huge deal. I think I have said that. But actually, 6 and 7 is where the changes start to begin. Because I can do a step 5 and then go out on my merry way. I'm not turning to God. I'm still as impatient as ever. I'm still intolerant. I'm the same person, just without a drink in me. There's been no psychic change. There's been no shift in my soul. 6 and 7 is where the changes really start to begin. The uncovering, the discovering, and the discarding. Because when it says, or when I discover that the root of my troubles is selfishness, self-centeredness driven by 100 forms of fear, when I discover the root of my troubles is defects, but that is not the root of me. The root of me, beyond the selfishness and dishonesty and the defects of character, when I get closer to spirit within me, the root is goodness and love at the root of all humans, I believe. Humility, service, love, all the things that are offered in this program as we do this walk. I do it very imperfectly. Um, grant me strength. Lack of power is my dilemma, always. Lack of power is my dilemma. I might think it's lack of money or this. No, it's lack of power. It's lack of power. Grant me strength as I go out from here to do your bidding. Amen. We have then completed step 7. Now, I love Bill Wilson. I love the big book, but I don't like that word. Sorry, shoot me now. Completed, because I'm always going to be in sort of 6 and 7 and step 10. But I get what it says. It's almost like I've completed it. Now I'm on to 8 and 9. And you know, I've often also heard in the 12 step rooms, the step 6 and 7, people say, oh, we call them the forgotten steps. Now I don't know about that. They are definitely not the forgotten steps. I understand why people might say it, that maybe haven't been taken through the big book in the way that we've been taken through it. They are so loud, step 6 and 7. They are so crucial, so vital to my continual spiritual growth. Am I growing along spiritual lines? If I'm in 6 and 7, I'm going to be growing along spiritual lines in conjunction with my prayer and with my meditation and with my helping others and with my inventory, because I believe it's all of these things that seem to chip away or allows God to chip away at these defects of character. Now, why is there so little written in the big book about these steps that are so vital and so crucial? I often ask myself, and I've only got my opinion, and my opinion is that the whole thing is about allowing the Spirit to remove these defects of character. The whole thing, from step 3 onwards, where I'm introduced to what the root of my trouble is. In the inventory process, where it says, I look for my own mistakes. Where was I? Selfish, dishonest, self-seeking, fearful, defects of character. And then it continues when I when I go into 8 and 9. It's through me turning to God with some asking for humility and willingness that I'm able to start making these amends. And then when I get to step 10 again, it says I continue to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. So what is it that I'm continuing to watch out for? Defects of character. And then I do an end of night review. What does it say? I'll probably misquote, but at the end of the night, where was I? Selfish, dishonest. Oh, it's just repeating, repeating, repeating. So these steps are so important, vital and crucial to my spiritual growth. Definitely not forgotten. The step 7 prayer has an amen next to it. It's kind of closing off from the step 3 prayer. If I put the steps side by side, they're very, very similar for me, in my heart. God, rebuild me, take all of me, help me to be helpful, take away my difficulties, get rid of the things that stand in the way, stand in the way, blocking me, blocking me, blocking me. um I think I'll continue reading. So we've got some instructions after step 6 and 7, but now we really get into this stuff. I was looking at the steps today and I was thinking that when I'm a newcomer and I don't understand them, they seem like this huge deal, but they're really not. They're so simple, so effective. Lifetime practice, lifetime practice. Um, because we do 1, 2, and 3. We get into that. We write some inventory, no big deal. We share it, and which can be a beautiful experience. Well, not, it is a beautiful experience. Sharing my soul with another soul, sharing my vulnerability. And then I refer to step 5 like the Scooby-Doo step. The Scooby-Doo step. Because in Scooby-Doo, where they're chasing people around and they think it's a monster, and when they find this monster and they take the hood off, they say, it was Mr. Jones, the janitor. And step 5 is like that. I take the mask off, and the problem wasn't you, it was me. And it come from these defects of character. So we do this 6 and 7 straight after step 5. I've got my step 8 and I'm straight into step 9. That's just so simple. But yet my mind will try to prevent me from growing spiritually. It will try and stall on step 4. It will try and stall on step 5. It won't want to let go of these defects of character. And this, for me, is where prayer and meditation come in. I have to continue to ask for the willingness and the awareness, which ties into what we've just read. So now we need more action. without which we find that faith without works is dead. Let's look at steps 8 and 9. We have a list of all persons we've harmed and whom we're willing to make the amends. We made it when we took our inventory. So I've already got my step 8, but also I get into prayer and see if anything else comes to me, if anything else is shown to me. Because by now I'm getting into the habit of sitting quietly and listening, because God whispers to me. God presents sometimes very tiny spiritual breadcrumbs that only come to me in the silence. But by now, by step 8 and 9, perhaps I'm getting into the habit, which is going to be a lifetime practice. So I'm willing to make the amends. Why? Because I want to be closer to God. I did an amends recently and I drove 16 hours and I was watching my mind work. My mind was trying to talk me out of it. Oh, it's too far. You don't really need to do that. Oh, it's going to be sunny. You could spend the weekend on the beach. I could see my mind trying to drag me away from getting closer to spirit. We made it when we took inventory. We subjected ourselves to a drastic self-appraisal. So we've started looking into ourselves and we continue to watch. And this is where the change starts to happen for me. When I stop watching you, because that's when I get these defects of character come up, when I'm watching you and I start looking into me. Now we go out to our fellows and repair the damage done in the past. We attempt to sweep away the debris. Again, in this next part, he's repeating what he's already said, which has accumulated out of our effort to live on self-will and run the show ourselves. Am I now convinced that my life run on my self-will can hardly be a success? By seeing all the mess, all the carnage, all the harms that I've caused, that should be a huge indication that me running my life, I cause harms. If we haven't the will to do this, I get into prayer and I ask until it comes. Like what I had to do when I did that amends recently. My mind, my self-will was, I kept praying, please give me the willingness to do this. Please give me the willingness. This bit is huge. Remember, it was agreed at the beginning we would go to any lengths for victory over alcohol. That's another reason I did that amends. I'm willing to go to any lengths. I agreed. Now, I spoke to someone a couple of days ago. They'd relapsed and they said, I don't know what happened. I was doing everything. I was sponsoring, I was doing service. I said to them, did you complete all your amends? And can you guess what the answer was? They hadn't. And that is very common when I hear people picking up. Often it's step 10, 11, but often not done all the amends. Because my mind, I might do a couple and then I think, oh, I'm okay now. It's a very forgetful illness. It's a very forgetful illness. So am I still willing to go to any lengths? Probably there's some misgivings. So I was just talking about amends with someone who I'm doing step 8 and 9 with at the moment. And I said to them, like was shown to me or taught to me, that the amends is not an apology, which we'll talk about in a minute, and it's not to get forgiveness. Because I thought it was to get forgiveness. And some people might disagree with this, and that's, I'm just coming from how I've been taught. I was taught that it's for our benefit, not for the other person's. Now, of course, the other person might get great benefit from it, and my experience is they often do. Sometimes I do get forgiven, but I have no power in how someone's going to react when I make the amends to them. Most times it's been positive, a couple it hasn't, but my 6 and 7 process enables me to bring love to each of those amends, to bring forgiveness, to bring kindness, and to not expect anything of you in return. That's where 6 and 7 starts to work. Because an apology is just from the head, whereas an amends is from my heart and from my soul. Probably there's some misgivings. As we look over the list of business acquaintances and friends we have hurt, we may feel diffident, So that means hesitant about going to some of them on a spiritual basis. Let us be reassured, to some people, we need not and probably should not emphasize the spiritual feature on our first approach. I don't need to shout about, oh, I'm a spiritual man. What's my demonstration? What's my action? What does my action show? What does my action show? And also relating to 6, 7, 9, all of this stuff. I have to remember I'm on a life and death errand. I have to remember what I am. I'm on a life and death errand. My selfishness might kill me. If I don't make all my amends, it might kill me like it might kill my friend. You know, I can't I can't forget what I am. I'm an alcoholic. I might be recovered, but I'm an alcoholic. Um, we might prejudice them. At the moment, we're trying to put our lives in order. And my experience is, after each amends I made, the sunlight of the Spirit just started igniting more and more and more. And each amends I made, I felt a bit more courage to make the next one. Each amends that I made, a little bit of me is dying, the old me. It's very significant for me, this amends process. I'm leaving that old person behind, that person who caused those harms, that person who acted in selfishness and dishonesty. I'm 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 suddenly, I'm almost, when it says we were reborn in step 3, I think I was reborn when I started making my amends. Um, at the moment, we're trying to put our lives in order. This is not an end in itself. I love this bit here. My real purpose is not to be sober, is to fit myself to be of maximum service to God and the people about us. Because when I do that, sobriety seems to come as a byproduct of fitting myself to be of maximum service. Serenity seems to come as a byproduct, not something I'm trying to create. Happiness, joy, a sense of purpose, a sense of meaning seems to come, not seems, does come as a byproduct of me placing myself to be of maximum service to God and the people about us. And I can't do that without 6 and 7. Jumping back to that. I'm not going to place myself to be of maximum service to you if I'm angry, impatient, jealous, intolerant, because I'm going to be stuck in the misery go round of my mind, of my self-pity. It's seldom wise to approach an individual who still smarts from our injustice to him and announce that we've gone religious. In the prize ring, this would be called leading with the chin. Why lay ourselves open to be branded fanatics or religious bores? We may kill a future opportunity to carry a beneficial message, but our man is sure to be impressed. Here we go. This sums up what an amends is for me. A sincere desire to set right a wrong. Not an apology, a sincere, from my heart, a desire, because I can see my wrongs. I don't want to be in pain anymore. I can see, I can feel, I'm experiencing the sunlight of the Spirit, and I have a sincere desire to set right a wrong. This is a demonstration of my step 7. He or she is going to be more interested in a demonstration of goodwill than in our talk of spiritual discoveries. Again, I don't have to shout about what I'm doing and how I'm living. My actions will show that. Because now I'm practicing these principles in all my affairs, whereas once I was practicing these defects of character in all my affairs. And because when we practice these principles, I have a sincere desire. I'm not ticking boxes. I'm not doing a tick box exercise. I'm walking a spiritual walk from my soul. I have a sincere desire. I want to put things right from my heart. Such a beautiful process, 8 and 9. I remember leaving a treatment center once when I didn't have a 12-step program, and the harms that I'd caused, particularly to my children and my family, weighed me down. It was almost like a dark cloud was following me around. I felt so guilty, so ashamed, so remorseful. And I remember thinking, how can I get rid of this? And of course, I couldn't get rid of it because without help, it's too much for me. And my mind twisted and took me back to a drink. And this process was the process that helped me to lighten the load. The remorse went, the guilt went, the shame went. I started to be reborn. I started to see that the person that caused those harms wasn't me, it was my illness. And so I wasn't trying to make excuses. Because step nine, this amends is me putting up my hands and saying I did it, not making any excuses for that, just saying I did it. How can I put this right? And then through that process, something starts shifting again. You know, this psychic change that Dr. Silkworth talks about, something starts to shift and I don't even know it's shifting. And then one day I feel a little bit lighter than I did yesterday. Um, we don't use this as an excuse for shying away from the subject of God. I love in the book where it says we never apologize for God. Why am I going to apologize for the very thing that is giving me life, keeping me sober, but giving me, why am I going to apologize for that? I'm going to shout about the good news. I am going to shout about the good news. When it will serve any good purpose, we are willing to announce our convictions with tact and common sense, with God's help. The question of how to approach the man we hated will arise. It may be he has done more harm than we have done him. And though we may have acquired a better attitude, because now I have different vision, I have a new set of glasses, I have a new attitude, I have a new reaction to life towards him, we are still not too keen about admitting our faults. Why? Because the ego is very strong. It doesn't want to die. It still wants control. It still wants to be right. Nevertheless, with a person we dislike, we take the bit in our teeth. It's harder to go to an enemy than to a friend, but we find it much more beneficial to us because I start to get humility. Now, my experience of what we've just read here, when I was 16 years old, I was only just 16. I was a little baby. I was a bit of a bad boy. And my mum, who's an alcoholic, she moved a man into our house and I didn't like him because I saw the house as our family home. And so I would smash his car up. I would go up to him with a knife. I would be very unpleasant to this guy. And so my mum chucked me out of the family home. And I've never lived back with my mother since then. And I held a resentment against her and him for maybe 30 years of my life. It ate me away. It was like poison. Because I know the resentment is like this poison that just, oh. And so when I got into prayer one day, I thought I'd done all my amends because this is how it's happened for me. I wrote my list, I went out and did my amends, but as the years went on, sometimes in prayer and meditation, when I got quiet, other names came to me. And this guy who happened to be from the country of Greece, and also on my first inventory, a resentment I had, Greece, the whole country, the whole country of Greece, I resented. Now I love Greece. I love the people. But this man's name came into my mind, and I thought, I need to make an amends to this man. And when I thought about it, he never reacted to me. He could have. I was just a stupid little angry boy. He never once reacted. He was showing me love without me even knowing it. I started to see. I started to see on a different depth. I need to make amends to this man. Now, I've searched for this guy and I can't find him, but I'm willing. I'm absolutely willing because I want to go closer to God. We go to him. So here's some instructions. In a helpful and forgiving spirit. So although this is saying about the man or woman we hated, I think we can bring this into all our amends. I'm going in a helpful and forgiving spirit. Confessing our former ill feeling and expressing our regret because now I no longer feel like that. Now we get into some instructions in the step 9 process. Under no condition do we criticize or argue. Now, some of the words in this book I love just trying to bring into all my life. It's great to live life and try not to criticize and argue. You know, I've I've never awake at night and thought, oh, I can't get to sleep because I didn't criticize anyone today. You know? But I've lay awake at night because I have criticized someone. I have criticized because now it becomes objectionable to me. So in the amends process, very simple instructions, never to criticize or argue. And now this is why step 8 and 9 are where they are in the step 12 process. Because if the amends process was at the beginning, you can bet, I was about to say you can bet your bottom dollar. I think I've been spending too much time with you American guys. You can bet your bottom dollar that I am going to be arguing and criticizing. I'm probably going to say, you know, I'm really sorry. And then you point some truths to me about me that I don't like. And I will say, yeah, but you did this. And what about you did this? But by now, I'm able to sit quietly when you're saying things to me. Because why? Because I'm awake to the sunlight of the Spirit. I'm bringing this step 7, this humility into this amends process. I'm going in a kind and loving way, a helpful and forgiving spirit. So under no condition am I going to criticize or argue. And I have to ask myself, not just in the amends process, but throughout the day, in interactions with my fellows, with other travelers, do I still need to be right? Do I still need to show you that I'm right? Or can I sit quietly? Um, Simply, we tell him we will never get over our drinking until we've done our utmost to straighten out the past. Now, there's a bit of a warning there. Like my friend has found out, didn't do all the amends he's picked up. I could name many others. Well, obviously, I'm not going to name them, but you know what I'm saying. We are there to sweep off our side of the street. I'm not trying to point out wrongs in you. I'm sweeping my side of the street. The blockages, the things that are going to block me still. I'm cleaning. Realizing that nothing worthwhile can be accomplished until we do so. Here we get to some more instructions for the amends, but I've wrote in my book life instructions. Never trying to tell him what he should do. Never. That's a great way to live. You know what you should do? Why don't you do that? You do that. I step on the toes of my fellows and they retaliate. Yeah, but I was trying to tell you how to do it better. Oh, Young, that's you playing God. Ah, I see what we mean now. So now I start waking up to things that I might have been asleep to. When we talk about the spiritual awakening, I start waking up. I start waking up. I start waking up that I shouldn't tell other people what they should do. But in the amends process, of course, my faults are not sorry. No, my faults are discussed. His faults are not discussed. We stick to our own because every human being is flawed like I am. But I'm not going to discuss your faults. I'm looking at me. And this is how I'm trying to live. We stick to our own. This is great. This is so clear. How's my manner need to be when I go and do this amends? Calm, frank, and open. I love that. I love that. And I think this 12-step program seems to make me calmer. I used to be a very angry person, very hyper. I think prayer and meditation has slowed down my mind, you know, and it's in silence that I allow grace to come in, you know, it's in silence that I'm not hysterical. It's in the pause. Um, so I'm just going to kind of re-go over those instructions. So what instructions from the big book that's so effective in the amends process so far? Okay, I'm going to go in a helpful and forgiving spirit. I'm going to go in a helpful and forgiving spirit. I'm going to have a sincere desire to set right the wrongs. Um, I'm not going to criticize or argue. I'm not going to criticize or argue. I'm not going to tell you what you should do. I'm not going to discuss your faults. And my manner, I'm going to be calm, frank, and open. So effective, those instructions, so effective. And then it says, in 9 cases out of 10, the unexpected happens. I'll share something with you where this just has just come to mind when the unexpected happened. Um, I did another step 5 last year, and I've been making a couple of amends that came up again, you know, and one of them was against my son's mother, and I realised, I thought, how's this never come up before? You know, God was, and how I look at these things, rightly or wrongly, is that these amends that have come up, I believe that I wasn't ready before, and God has just presented me them when I'm now ready, when I've grown a little bit more. Um, and so I went and sat down and I did the amends with her, and we both cried, and it was a very powerful, beautiful experience. Why am I sharing this? I'm sharing it because of that last line we've just read. In 9 cases out of 10, the unexpected happens. Right? So you've got to imagine, I caused her a lot of harm. We were 21 years old, you know, I'm both children. I got her pregnant. I don't have no idea how to look after anyone, even myself, etc. And she's seen me over the years just deteriorate in my alcoholism, etc., etc. I wasn't there, you know, as a father should be. I am today, but I wasn't. Um, the unexpected happened after that amends. We sat down, and I said, "Is there anything? Is there anything I can do for you to put this right? I'll do anything." And she said she has another son, a younger son. His father's quite elderly, and she said, if anything happens to us, will you make sure he's okay? Will you look after him? Oh man, I wasn't expecting that to happen. Whoa, I was not expecting that to happen. This beautiful soul is trusting me to ask me this. This man that caused her harm, that did those things, why she's seen that I'm not that man anymore. Not by my talk, but she can see. And that, man, these things, they help me grow spiritually. They help the fire go on. They help me to see the goodness, the godness within me, that I'm not that person anymore. The unexpected happens. Wow. I still, when I share it with you, it still blows my mind. The unexpected happens. Sometimes the man we are calling upon admits his own faults. So feuds of years standing melt away in an hour. Rarely do we fail to make satisfactory progress. Feuds of years melt away, problem solved. Problem solved. Because people see us, they see us, they see our walk. They see that now we are not just words, because our words, well, my words became very cheap. I'd said sorry a million times. I'd said, I promise I will be a different person, but without help, it was too much for me. You know, lack of power was my dilemma, but I didn't know that. I do today. Um, Occasionally they will offer assistance. They see the change in us, and many times they wish they're rooting for us because they see this miraculous demonstration of this power in our lives. They can't quite believe it. Some people have said to me, "What has happened to you? What has happened to you?" um, Occasionally, they will offer assistance. It should not matter, however, if someone does throw us out of his office. We have made our demonstration. We've done our part. So, like I said earlier on, the outcome of my amends is out of my hands because now I'm out of the outcome business. I'm turning to God. I put in the action. The outcome's nothing to do with me. Nothing to do with me. Um, I have been chucked out of one place when I made the amends. Um, but that's okay. That was just how it flowed. But in 9 cases out of 10, it's been a beautiful experience. And even when I look back at the time when I was chucked out of someone's house by a massive guy from Scotland, and if anyone's been chucked out of a house by a massive guy from Scotland, it's not the most pleasant experience, especially when he's got tattoos all over. But when I look back on that moment, I can see it was invaluable for me. It was another part of my spiritual growth. There was always spiritual breadcrumbs laid at my feet if I sit in silence. Um, we have made our demonstration. It's water over the dam. Um, I had another experience that I'll share with you with amends, and this is an amends that was made to me. I was speaking on a meeting. It was a meeting in New York, and I always put my number up there because I'm always contactable because I love speaking to you guys. I love the 12 steps. I love the big book. I love God. God loves me, apparently. I'm still alive. Um, and someone contacted me after the meeting and they said, Young, would you allow me to make the amends? And that's how I approach amends. I use that language, to make the initial contact. Would you allow me? Would you allow me? And I was quite tired and I thought I'll contact him in the morning, which I did. And I said, of course I would. I said, I'm quite curious to know who you are. And I thought maybe it's an old spotty or what, I don't know. And he said, yesterday you told a story of when you were 11 years old and you used to hang around in a little gang of kids who were as broken as you were and used to get into a lot of trouble and used to drink vodka and all sorts of stuff. He said, I was one of those children. What? I'm 50 years old. It was when I was 11 years old. This guy happens to be on this meeting in New York. He'd never been on that meeting before. And I happened to be speaking. And he'd been in prison most of his adult life. And he said, and he'd done a lot of crime. And what had happened, he used to be my real good friend, but he got into a lot of trouble in with a lot of older children. And he ended up burgling my house, robbing my house. And he said, of all the crimes I did, Young, for some reason, I always thought about you. I knew I needed to make amends, but I had no idea how I would find you. Now, as we know in Alcoholics Anonymous, God, Spirit works in mysterious ways. And I laugh because my first sponsor used to tell me a very similar story of something that happened to him like that. And I used to think, that sounds a bit far-fetched. But I believed him because I believed him. But now I have my own story. Because I know these miracles happen to us. I know because I am one and I know because you are one. And so he made the amends to me and I said, yeah, I remember I felt really scared that someone had burgled my house. And I'd heard on the grapevine it was him and I felt really rejected and humiliated and that everyone was laughing at me and all these things. And we had a beautiful conversation and now we're walking this path together. Now we'll meet up at conventions and meetings and it's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. He's been free from that. I'm free from, well, I wasn't thinking about it, but it's all these moments that really help my growth in this program. Um, okay, I'm just going to read a little bit more. Most alcoholics owe money. We do not dodge our creditors. Now, I need to be free from this stuff. I need to be free. When I come into Alcoholics Anonymous, I had one bag of clothes and a lot of debts behind me, which I was running from. And I didn't want to pay them. Well, I couldn't pay them. And I remember my sponsor said, you can only pay what you can afford, Young. Why don't you start contacting your friends that you took money off and even offering them £5 a month I couldn't even afford any more than that. I was on welfare. He said it's the demonstration. And a lot of those guys, they actually writ off the debt. You know, I paid them a little bit and they said, you know what, Young, we can see you're really trying. You're trying. But the point is that I don't want to be looking over my shoulder anymore. I don't want to be looking over my shoulder. I want to be free. I want to be free. Um, and I'm still paying off some loans and stuff. But you know what? It's fine. It's going to take me years and years, but I'm paying them off every month. I'm paying. Um, telling telling them what we're trying to do because now God is money is not my God. I have enough of everything. I don't need anything. I've got a big book. I've got people who want to be helped. What else do I need? You know, and I remember my sponsor, my first sponsor, when I used to say, I haven't got any money. He said, Young, as long as you've got £5 in your back pocket, a big book, and you're helping others, God will always look after you. And that has been the case for all those years. All those years. It's been the case. Um, Telling them what we're trying to do, we make no bones about our drinking. They usually know it anyway, whether we think so or not. Nor are we afraid of disclosing our alcoholism on the theory it may cause financial harm. Approached in this way, the most ruthless creditor will sometimes surprise us. Arranging the best deal we can, we let these people know we are sorry. Our drinking has made us slow to pay. And this bit is the big bit for me here. We, we must lose our fear of creditors no matter how far we have to go. And here's the warning, because I'm liable to drink if I'm afraid to face them. But now I'm not living in fear. Now I am living in faith. I am turning to the sunlight of the Spirit. I am bringing love to the equation, not fear. Most of the time. Most of the time. I think I'll leave it there. It's been a real privilege to speak today. I hope I've helped someone in some small way. I'm going to stop recording.